All right, well, Vikings cornerback Chris Boyd had some colorful comments for his old coach, Mike Zimmer, when he joined the Patrick Peterson on his podcast, where he opened up, he let loose on the former regime. Here's what he had to say about Zimmer and the previous coaching staff. Quote, they would always walk around with their sphincters tight, would always be strict about everything. Anytime you messed up, it's like the end of the world. KOC and them, way more chill, way more relaxed. Whatever we got to get fixed, we're going to fix. We're going to keep rolling. We're going to bounce back and figure it out. He then went on talking about the new culture brought in, saying the whole vibe. Everybody's way more relaxed as a defense, as a whole team, the vibe. Nobody's really worried about too much. Like, we really are here to enjoy football and learn and just be the best us. It's no secret, Reggie, that Zimmer was an old school, hard-nosed coach, known for putting players in the doghouse at a whim's notice. And I think there's certainly a time and place for that, I think. But Boyd was in the doghouse. Cam Dantzler was benched. He was benched halfway through the season. They brought in Bashaud Breeland the next day and started him over Dantzler continuously, even though he often struggled as well. He spoke lowly of Kellen Mond and never gave him a real chance to develop and take those second-team reps. Maybe the biggest example was cutting Daniel Carlson after he missed 3 kicks in Green Bay. All he's done is gone on and become one of the best kickers in the NFL. We know that Eric Kendricks came out and said, you can't have a fear-based led organization. Those comments have just been echoed all offseason by many others. It was clear, as much as some love Zimmer, what he did here in Minnesota, a change was desperately needed for both parties. But these quotes from Boyd really paint a detailed picture of just how bad things got at the end of Zimmer's tenure.
You know what this reminds me of? This new generation of players and people are just different. My mom is old school. You know, she's not as old school as her parents, but she's pretty old school. And, you know, she governed us accordingly, governed me accordingly, I would say. So, you know, she was tough on me. You know, she was, you know, my dad passed when I was 13. And she was really, really tough on me because she just wanted me to be prepared for the world. And she wanted me to, you know, the world can be an unforgiving place. And so she wanted me to kind of develop that tough skin. So she would give me a lot of tough love, right? Well, here's my brother comes along 10 years later. We're 10 years apart. And she tried to govern him the same way. He just didn't take well to that. You know, some of the things that, you know, some of her methods, you know, to discipline just wouldn't really work on him. Like, she had to kind of refine herself and just kind of develop a different kind of way of disciplining my brother, because he just wasn't taking to that same, you know, style as I was. This is what that kind of, you know, feels like. Deion Sanders loves Mike Zimmer. You know, all the players from, you know, back in the day who Zimmer coached, they love him, love him. He was tough on them just like he's tough on this current, you know, group of players. Maybe he got a little bit more paranoid. Maybe he got a little bit more, you know, I don't know, fear-based and, you know, all those things as time went along, because he was just coaching for his job. But some of those same methods, if you don't evolve with how the players are and how the next generation is, you're going to fall behind. And that's what it seems like happened. Like, he tried to govern and he tried to, you know, discipline and rule his players kind of like how he used to back in the day. And these newer guys, they're just like, look, man, we don't take to all of that. Like, we don't do well with all of that. And so now you kind of have it where, you know, goodness gracious, the day that Zimmer was relieved from head coach from the Vikings, like, you got all these players who chose to speak out with the media, saying all these like things that were just like kind of like inflammatory. Like you were just like, whoa, like where did all this come from? Whoa, like Eric Kendricks, Brian O'Neill, like all these players that were speaking about, the team moving forward, moving on from Mike Zimmer. They were saying all these things that were just like, woo, okay, oh, all right, and some was a little bit more covert, and you kind of had to read between the lines of what they were saying. But now that they got the new regime in the building and, the new vibe and the new culture in the building, like players are speaking out just like Chris Boyd and just saying exactly what's on their minds. And that is just very, very interesting because Mike Zimmer is not a bad coach. Like, I don't think you'll get anyone to ever say something like that, but maybe he just needs to refine how he deals with players moving forward, because clearly as things went on in the later part of his tenure, things just kind of got a little bit sour, and players just didn't really take well to his coaching style. And I think that probably had a lot to do. I mean, we talk about the talent. I was looking at ESPN yesterday, NFL Live, Dan Orlovsky put the Vikings at like number 2 in his top 5 offensive skill players in the league. Like, the talent is there. Like, the skill is there. The team is there. We saw it last year. Like, they could go in and compete with anybody. But some of the ways that he motivated them, some of the ways that, he responded to them and how they played and some of their actions on the field really kind of rubbed players the wrong way. And they were playing for sense of self, playing for sense of pride for the organization, but maybe not necessarily playing for him. And that's tough, because when you have a leader that you can believe in, you'd want to run through a brick wall for them. And time will tell, how O'Connell, I do think he has a little bit of a switch he's probably going to flip when times get tough, where he's going to be like, okay, I'm no nonsense. This is not what we're doing around here. And that's fine. But I do think that he is relationship based, and he's a younger guy, so he relates to some of the players a little bit more. And that goes a long way in team morale and team confidence. And if they have a better morale and have a better confidence, then maybe you start to see that transcend, all the other stuff, and you kind of see that transfer over to the field as well, where you have success. They won 8 games last year, and they had all the, quote unquote dysfunction and all the problems with, the fear-based organization and, Zimmer benching this guy in favor of this guy for making mistakes and all that stuff. But they still won 8 games and put themselves in position to be in the playoffs in the last couple weeks of the season, and it just didn't work out. You change the culture around this thing, and maybe you think things are different. Maybe you think they might make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, very well said. I think as a coach, you're a teacher. That's what you are. When you strip everything down to its core fundamental values, you're there to teach specific players. The biggest difficulty with being a teacher is that everybody learns a little bit differently. And we know Mike Zimmer was called out for being a little bit stubborn in his old school ways, but it's so important and so valuable to be able to decipher, know, and understand when to dish out the tough love and when to kind of flip that switch and turn towards that person and give them a little bit more gentle, softer, caring love, whether you're a coach or a parent, like you just mentioned with your mom and the differences between you growing up and your brother growing up. So very good point there for sure. Something to keep in mind when you're looking at the regime change from Mike Zimmer to Kevin O'Connell and this new school approach of being a team-friendly leader as the coach. I think it's just interesting of a topic in discussion because coaching isn't just like adding a premier free agent or a top 5 blue chip prospect. It's not quite as tangible of an addition when it comes to projecting how much more successful a team will become. Veteran mandatory minicamp picks up today for the Vikings. It's just going to be intriguing to see how quickly this team can gel together and hit the ground running, or start out the gate slow like most teams usually do when learning an entirely new system and a playbook. But when it comes to KOC, just how much can changing the culture equate to more wins for the Vikings? Because we all know this team's got a lot of talent. You just talked about NFL Live, number 2 skill set in the NFC, the Vikings own on offense. How many actual wins can a new coaching staff bring to the table, in your opinion?
I guess it just depends on how well he coaches the X's and O's. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like when Zach Taylor came into the Bengals a few years ago, moving over from Marvin Lewis, like it was a stark difference. Like Marvin Lewis is old school. He had Mike Zimmer with him for several years, and they were kind of dealing with players and dealing with the organization in a different way. But you know what? Players did love playing for Marvin Lewis, so it was a little bit different. But they just kind of needed to shake things up a little bit. And when Zach Taylor first got the job in Cincinnati, people thought, like, this dude is in over his head. Like, what is going on? Some head-scratching decisions. The dude is way too optimistic all the time. Like, he's dressing up doo-doo and saying that it's peanut butter. And he's just like, dude, no, like it's not. It's like you smell that? Like the stench is not like that's not peanuts, brother.
That's
like,
doo-doo, baby.
Yeah, that's stanky. So like that was interesting when he came in, and then you started to see some of the players that they got a chance to bring into that organization, and some of the offensive skill set that he was able to kind of develop, and then you saw that he was able to coach them to a way that took them to the Super Bowl. And so now you come in with Kevin O'Connell, and he's got an offensive background coming from his days in Washington and Los Angeles now, and now you're just like, okay, this guy's got some juju, like he's got some juice, like I like what he's doing. But then when it comes to X's and O's, like this is going to be his first time really like calling plays full time. This is going to be his first time as a head coach managing a football game, and he's going to have some help. But like you just don't really know. Like you brought in a new regime, and you brought in a new coaching staff. You're kind of switching things up, going from 4-3 to a 3-4 on defense. And so like a lot of things need to gel from an X's and O's standpoint. And so I guess their success just kind of depends on how well they take to the system and how well that system works in this modern day NFL. And so, it's something to be said about the morale and about confidence and about culture and all those good things. A lot of times when the culture is better, the team can be better, just from an overall. But we've seen good cultures and teams go 6-10. 5-11, 4-12, but they're like, man, this is a really tight football team,
right?
Like last season, Urban Meyer, dumpster fire, but he just kept saying this is a really good football team. We have really great people in this building, and it's just like, yeah, it's great, but can you lead them? So it's just a matter of if Kevin O'Connell can lead them and put them in positions to win game in and game out. And that remains to be seen because he hasn't done it yet.
I mean, when you look at some bad teams, they just don't have the talent. The talent's not there yet. They need a good offseason, a good draft, a rebuild. Vikings have talent already in place, and it's not just young talent that needs to be developed. It's a lot of core. I mean, there's a core nucleus of veterans there that are ready to come in and, again, start to make an impact and a big change. Love that you brought up the Bengals, by the way. Some shades of similarities going from that old school Marvin Lewis for years, a decade plus, to that new school approach, pass-happy league with Zach Taylor. Vikings fans obviously hoping for similar results and their success under Zach Taylor. Just going to be a lot of fun to see how these core veterans and rookies gel together under this new coaching staff. Again, veteran camp starts today, goes until June 9th. And then I think there's a little bit of a break there for a while until training camp starting at the end of July.